Today we are talking about dealing with difficult players. Players that you know when they're coming over, you're like, oh man, it's going to be a rough session if they're going to show up. Players that you have to remind every 5 or 10 minutes, hey, stop checking the rules on me, let's just play the game. Players that come over and never seem to have fun. No matter what reward you get them, no matter how much you put them in the spotlight, they never have fun. So let's get into it, dealing with difficult or stubborn players. Now before we get into this video, I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about, hey, I really wouldn't do that to this player in this situation, or, I would never say that or do that to this player, but these are just my opinions and my experiences that I've had with players and how I've dealt with them and have gotten the best outcome from dealing with them in these certain situations that I'm about to go through. So if you're like, man, Skoot, that's not really a good idea to do that, well, I'm sorry. This is just how I approach things and how I deal with it. But if you're like, hey, I would deal with that completely different, and you want everyone to know, drop it in the comments. How would you deal with certain people that I'm about to discuss? Drop it in the comments. Let people know. First type of player I'm going to talk about is players that like to argue all the time. They're either challenging you on certain situations, they're picking fights with players at the table. They always have something to be upset about, something to argue with. And with those players, what I would do is, first off, talk to them. Ask them, hey, what's going on? What's the deal? Why are you always arguing with this player? Why do you always have a hard time with this? The last thing you want to do as a DM is to argue at the table with them. You're going to stop the entire session for your players. It's going to feel awkward. Mom just hit dad at the dinner table, and all the rest of the players are just going to be sitting there like, man, this is a great session. We drove to come hang out with everybody. So with players that argue, talk to them first after the session. Ask them why they're always challenging either your rulings as the DM or why they're always trying to pick fights with the other players at the table. They seem to bring up some good points. Address those points. Meet them halfway. Don't discredit anything that they're saying and be like, no, well, you're wrong. Everything that you're saying, I don't really care for, so you can just go ahead and leave. Try to find a middle ground first to meet that player of how he wants his game to go and how you want your game to go, instead of just outright saying, you know what, you're out of here, you're no longer allowed to come to the sessions. Try to find that middle ground. And if it comes to that, if there is not a middle ground, you're gonna either have to kick him from the session and be like, hey man, my style of DMing is this. If this doesn't really go well for you, you're gonna have to find another party, another DM, or you can either allow them to keep coming to sessions and ruining everybody's fun. So really, you have to talk to them first. Try to meet them halfway. And if that's not possible, then maybe the session that you are hosting is not the right session that they are looking for. Next up, we have book lawyers. Those darn book lawyers. You're running through an encounter and you're describing the combat and you're telling people to roll for different checks. And he says, no, wait a minute. On page 158, it says this, and that. So we're not allowed to do that. Book lawyers. Yeah, go ahead and do a wisdom check for me. No, on page 203 it says we don't have to do that because we get a passive perception check that should meet the DC of this situation. Those players try to do the same thing as I was talking about before. Don't stop the session. Be like, hey, that's a really good point. Thank you for letting me know. I will go ahead and write that down. Don't ever argue at the table with that player. Every DM has their own way of running their session. Books are guidelines. These are the rules. If you want to play by these rules, cool. If you want to play kind of loosey-goosey with rules, that's fantastic. As long as the players are having fun, go for it. Every rule doesn't have to be black and white from the book, and that player needs to understand that you are hosting the session in your own way as the DM for these players. So, like I've said before, after the session, be like, hey, I think it's really fantastic of what you're doing and trying to help me out and showing me the different points of my errors that are pertaining to the rulebook, but this is the way that I like to DM, and this is the way that I have been DMing. So once again, tell them, hey, I appreciate your input and I think it's fantastic you're checking the book and reading up and refreshing everybody with the rules, but just let him know, this is the way that I DM. And like before, try to meet him halfway, and if you can't, then he's gonna have to go find another party that's more pertinent on, if reading the rules verbatim. You have negativity at the table. A player, he shows up late, he just kind of slumps, throws his paper on the table, gets his dice out, and just kind of puts his head in his hand, you know, just kind of looks around and says, all right, I'm here, let's play. If you have a player bringing negativity to the table, that's the last thing you want. Impose on everyone else's fun and trying to be in this immersive land, these campaigns, these worlds that you have brought I'm sorry, and presented for these players. If he's showing up and he's not having a good time, ask him why. Like, hey, are you not having fun playing your character? If he's showing up and he's not having fun, ask him why. Maybe it's because he doesn't like the character that he's running. Maybe he doesn't like the encounter or the type of session that you're DMing for. Maybe you're doing a really roleplay heavy narrative type session, and he's more of the go in the dungeon, get loot, and just kill everything type of dungeon crawler player. Try to discuss with him and to find out, you know, what he can get out of the session in order to have a way better time. And if he says, you know, well, this session really isn't for me, I don't really like playing the game anymore, I'm kind of burnt out, then let him take a break. Be like, hey, you know, that's perfectly fine, man. If you want to take a break, maybe take a couple weeks, months off from the session and then come back and see if you still like it, that'd be awesome. But try not to have that negativity there at the table. Another type of person that I would say be considered in this class is players that threaten to kill other players for items, for glory, for power. If there's a half-orc barbarian and he sees a rogue get into a chest and find a fantastic set of gauntlets, and the barbarian player says, hey, I'm going to kill your player if you don't give me those items. And the whole time that he has been playing, he's been threatening all the players into giving them all their loot, their gold, their money. Get rid of them. You don't need that player. First off, like I said before, talk to him beforehand. Hey man, you're running the session for everyone else, but also talk to your other players to see what they think. A lot of the time the players are going to be like, oh no, it's not that big of a problem. It's okay if he takes all my stuff that I find and completely, you know, takes the gear that I've searched for. See, the players, they're not going to tell the DM most of the time that, you know, hey, I really am having a problem with this guy. I really don't like him at the table. And I mean, a lot of times they might, but in my situations, I have found that the players don't really want to discredit anybody or say or talk bad on another player because they want to still come to these sessions and not have this negative energy brought to the table by bringing these topics up to the DM. But as the DM, it is your job to, you know, you're hosting this session for these players. You're going to have a fantastic time playing. It's going to be fun for you, for everyone else, and the last thing you need is negativity. So it is your job as the game master to make sure that these topics are brought up to keep the game running smoothly. So in all of these topics, it really comes down to talk to the player first. Don't ever kick them without talking to them or getting to the bottom of things. Don't ever at the end of the session, you know, hey, none of us really like you, so you can leave. Just leave. Don't ever do that. Talk to the player first. See what's going on. Maybe he's having some personal issues at home that he's stressed out about, and it's bleeding into the session. Maybe he's getting burnt out, or he doesn't like playing the character that he seemed to enjoy at first, but now he's getting kind of tired of him. Always talk to the player first. Never just kick them. And a lot of times, if things don't work out, he's either going to have to take a pretty long break or a permanent one. You want to talk to them first. If things don't work out, then they're going to have to leave and, you know, try to meet them halfway. At least try to meet them halfway. That's it for me, guys. I'm going to be trying to do some Roll20 business, try to host some sessions on Roll20. We'll see how that goes. I honestly haven't done any hosting on Roll20 because I just like that face-to-face interaction, flipping through physical pages, and, you know, rolling dice and hearing them hit the table. So I'm going to try to do my first session today on Roll20. We will see how that goes. So I think I've gotten a couple people that commented back on Twitter and Reddit, but we'll see. But other than that, you guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Drop some comments, like I said, if you think some of these topics that I've addressed were like, you know, no, Skoot, you know, I wouldn't do that. You should do it this way. I seriously, I really do want to hear from you guys. So you guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are, and I will see you guys later.